Get this shit started. Alright, let's get my shit together. What's up, Ramir? I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself? Just gonna do this quick video before I go to bed. Gotta work 7 a.m. and I got a DJ gig right after that, so I'm like, let me get this shit together. Yep, lots of things are going on in the music industry. Of course, the Tupac trial is happening. I know Game dropped his new documentary. Let me. He dropped the documentary 3 today, which I still have yet to finish the album. It's like 20 something songs and everything like that too. You know what I'm saying? What else is going on? What else is going on? Of course, last night we had the Joe and Donnell Jones, the Joe and Donnell Jones verses. That shit was fire as fire. I felt Joe definitely did his thing. Once he brought out G Unit and everything was a wrap. I mean, they did a power theme song, but Donnell Jones. I mean, the thing with Donnell Jones, man, it's like his first 2, maybe 3 albums was fire too. Like, y'all forget he did a lot of writing and producing too for other people. Like, when he played that joint from Usher's first album, I was like, yo, I was not expecting that and everything like that. Cause niggas always want to forget about that album. I think even now, even they want to forget about it now because of, Puffy's involvement and everything like that too. You know what I'm saying? Which it's a shame because I actually like that album more than a lot of latter Usher albums post Confession. I'm gonna keep it a buck with y'all. What else is going on? What else is going on? Of course, rest in peace, Hayden Panettiere. That was a shock. I'm like, yo, hold up, what? And everything like that too, because she was pretty much like in the mid 30s, and now they're pretty much trying to figure out like how she died and everything like that too. You know what I'm saying? And it's such a shame because she was in a lot of stuff. She was definitely in a lot of stuff, and she was definitely one of like those premier actors. I remember when I first saw her, she was on that movie Remember the Titans and everything like that too. You know what I'm saying? I mean, yeah, rest in peace to her. What else? What else? What else? What else? What else? What else is going on? There's a lot of stuff happening. We're literally about to be in September. We're literally about to be in the last quarter of the year, which is crazy. Very crazy. It felt like just yesterday this year just started. To be real with you, it felt like just yesterday this year just started, but it is what it is. I'm about to start this shit in a few minutes because, like I said, I'm not trying to stay up too long with this one. Okay. Alright, let me get this shit started. What's up, YouTube? How y'all doing? It's your boy Reg in the building. Um, like I promised, this is the long-awaited sequel to the Rolling Stones Discography breakdown. Give me 1 second. Sorry about that, my throat was dry. And yeah, this is part 2 of the Rolling Stones Discography breakdown. Last episode I concluded with Tattoo You, that came out in 1981, which a lot of fans have called one of those last great Rolling Stones albums, one of those last classics, and everything like that too. Which, I'm gonna be real with you, Tattoo You is definitely a hard album to top and everything like that too. You know what I'm saying? What's up, Yuko? But at the same time too, excuse me. At the same time too, I felt like the stuff post Tattoo You was very interesting. I'm gonna be real with you. I have a lot of different opinions than like the general consensus of certain Rolling Stones albums. So some albums I like more than others. Some albums I like more than others. Some albums you might be surprised by my reaction and everything like that too. But we're gonna get this shit started. So this is what we're gonna get into the 80s and everything like that too. So after the release of Tattoo You, they pretty much went on tour and everything, and this was actually one of their most lucrative tours, and it was so popular that we actually got the Still Life American Concert album from 1982, which that was pretty cool. I'm gonna be real with you, I don't like that as much as the Get Your Yayas Out and everything like that too, but I felt like that live album is definitely worth it. You know what I'm saying? And it was also crazy because at that time, by the end of '82, they had signed a new 4-album recording deal with CBS Records and everything like that too. You know what I'm saying? And you know, this pretty much was not helping. Excuse me. This was not helping the already feuding Mick and Keith and stuff, which I kind of hinted on that in the last album, the discography breakdown we did before that in part 1. So before they went to CBS and everything, they dropped excuse me, they dropped the Undercover album in 1983. I'm gonna show the album cover and everything. I don't know if I'll get flagged for this, but fuck it. So this is the album cover right here and everything. I think I'm just gonna keep it like this because, you know, just for YouTube purposes and stuff like that too, you know what I'm saying? I'm just gonna keep it like that. And plus, you know, StreamYard always has an issue when it comes to just highlighting the album cover and stuff like that too, you know what I'm saying? So 1980 excuse me, 1983 they came out with this album. This album was pretty interesting because if you really want to be technical, it was actually excuse me, damn, my throat is dry as hell. It was actually the first true Rolling Stones album that they recorded for the 80s, because if you gotta remember, Emotional Rescue, that album was recorded mostly 1979 and everything like that too. And then with Tattoo You, they pretty much had outtakes and everything like that too, you know what I'm saying? So Now you get into Undercover, and now we're fresh into the '80s and everything. But Mick Jagger, he wanted to adapt to the modern trends of music with what he was doing, like as far back as the Some Girls album, whereas Keith Richards wanted to have that true Rolling Stone sound. So like this album pretty much has some guest musicians and everything like that too. Honestly, I'm gonna be real with you. I've always liked this album. I've always liked this album. Of course, it's not touching Tattoo You, but this album is definitely like a lot of fun and everything like that too. You know what I'm saying? This was the Stones fully embracing MTV era and everything like that too, because even the music videos for this time, they were very experimental, which we'll talk about that when we talk about that. Um, and even like the lyricism was like a lot more darker. And I've always loved when Mick Jagger has that angry, gruff sound whenever he's doing this music and whenever he's doing his singing and everything like that too. You know what I'm saying? Especially when it comes to this and the next album. Like I love songs like Undercover of the Night, which is a very underrated song. Tie You Up, The Pain Is Love was real dope. I love Pretty Beat Up, that was pretty cool too. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, definitely love this one. It definitely captures the anger. It definitely captures the anger that they were feeling towards each other at that time and everything like that too. You know what I'm saying? So I'm definitely gonna give this album a 4 out of 5 and everything. I feel like this is definitely a very interesting album and highly recommended. All right. And now you're gonna get into motherfucking dirty work and everything like that too. You know what I'm saying? This album came out in 1986. This was still, this was still part of the whole era when they were beefing. So, right in between this album and Undercover, you know what I'm saying? There was talks that they were going to break up and everything like that too. And what really irritated Keith Richards was the fact that Mick Jagger signed a solo deal with CBS Records and everything like that too. You know what I'm saying? And he dropped his first solo album, She's the Boss, in 1985. That album was okay. He was trying to embrace that whole new wave sound and everything like that too. You know what I'm saying? And it definitely sounded like something that definitely would have came out in that time frame and everything like that too. You know what I'm saying? It's not my favorite Mick Jagger solo album. That's just gonna come down the line, but it definitely captures that Rolling Stone sound of the '80s and everything. Also around this time too, Mick Jagger, he was doing songs with other artists. He appeared on the Jacksons, what's the album? The album was a Victory album on the song State of Shock, which originally was supposed to have featured Freddie Mercury from Queen. But I think I've read that they know Freddie didn't really like the version or him. He didn't really have a good experience, in the studio like that too. From what I looked up and everything, so they brought in Mick Jagger, and Jagger did his thing on that. You know what I'm saying? Most notably, Mick Jagger collaborated with David Bowie for the cover of Martha and the Vandellas "Dancing in the Street." You know what I'm saying? That was a pretty successful cover and everything like that too. Which was kind of ironic because 3 years earlier, Van Halen did a very Van Halen did a very, very, very dope cover of that song for the Diver Down album and stuff like that too. You know what I'm saying? However, tragically, like in late '80s, '85, Ian Stewart, like their pianist, he actually passed away from a heart attack and everything like that too. You know what I'm saying? And that created like that was like a wrong blow and everything like that too. You know what I'm saying? Because Ian was like one of those key ingredients to that Rolling Stone sound, especially when it comes to like his piano playing and everything like that too. You know what I'm saying? Um, so yeah, man. So with that being said, in 1986, they finally came out with this album, Dirty Work, which I might surprise a lot of people. This is another album I kind of feel gets a bit overhated. I feel it kind of gets a little bit overhated and everything like that too when it comes to the Rolling Stones and everything, you know. And a lot of fans have also said this was like their least favorite album and everything. A lot of people have said that, but who the fuck is this boo? But I'm gonna be real with you. I've always liked this album. To be real with you, I've always liked this album. Personally, I feel like it still captures that same sound as the Undercover album. My only gripe with this album is the singles. I feel like the singles, I never cared for the singles like that and everything like that. You know what I'm saying? I never cared for those singles. Like, what was that one song? Harlem Shuffle. Never liked that song. Never liked that song. Never liked One Hit to the Body. I don't know. It just screamed 1986. Even though I do like the fact that I do like the fact that Jimmy Page did collaborate on that record and everything like that too, you know, but it has some other great songs too, you know what I'm saying? Like, one song I love is Fight. That was good. My favorite song on this record, Winning Ugly, which was a very heavy track right there too, you know what I'm saying? It definitely sounds like something that can be playing like one of those sport movies, montages, and everything, you know. Um, yeah, I definitely like that one. Back to Zero was pretty good too. That song actually had backing vocals and guitar work by the late great Bobby Womack, you know. So, and speaking of guest appearances, you had like a wide variety of guest appearances on this album, from Bobby Womack to Jimmy Page. You even had people like Jimmy Cliff and Tom Waits and everything, you know, doing backing vocals. Of course, Marco Ribas on percussion. So it gives the album a very eclectic sound, you know. Like I said, I've always, it's not like the bad songs on this album are bad. Oh wait, I didn't even share the album cover. I'm tripping. Like when it comes to the bad songs on this album, they are definitely bad in a way and everything like that. But I'd rather listen to this album over like that Satanic Majestic, Black and Blue, which I know it might be sacrilegious to some, but you talking to somebody that really listened to all their shit. So I'm gonna give this one maybe like a 3.2 out of 5 and everything. You know, so that's my thoughts on this one. And then now we're gonna leave into this one. And after this album, they kind of took a little break. You know, they did some other stuff, did some other things. And again, there was more talks that they were about to break up. Then fast forward to 1988, Keith Richards, he dropped his solo album, Talk Is Cheap, in 1988. I'm gonna be real with you. That is one of my favorite Rolling Stones solo albums of all time. That album actually took me by surprise. It definitely has a more bluesier rock sound compared to anything that Stone done in that decade and everything. I've even heard a lot of people even say that's like one of the best Rolling Stones albums next to Tattoo You. You know, so that should definitely tell you something. You know what I'm saying? Also, Mick Jagger, he also dropped his second album, Primitive Cool, in 1987. That album was a bit better than She's the Cool. You know what I'm saying? It definitely had like a more rock sound. It definitely had like a more rock sound compared to She's the Boss. You know what I'm saying? Definitely had like a more rock sound and everything like that too. So that was actually pretty solid for the most part. And by the time that the '80s was about to end, you know, they actually got back together. They put aside their differences and everything like that too. And it's kind of ironic too because '89 was also the year that they were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Yeah, so they had reunited with Mick Taylor as well too. Because he was inducted and shit. Of course, Brian Jones, he had already passed away. Of course, Ian Stewart had already passed away as well too. So fast forward to, of course, 1989. Now we're going to get into their album Steel Wheels and everything. Give me 1 second. Alright, so Steel Wheels. This album came out. This was supposed to be like their back to basics album in a way and everything like that too, you know what I'm saying? You know, I know a lot of fans that said that this was like their comeback album and everything like that too, you know what I'm saying? Especially due to the fact that Mick and Keith set the differences aside and everything. I do like this album. I don't love it, but I do like it. You know what I'm saying? I do feel like it's definitely a more rock heavy sound, but it was so polished when it came to this production and everything like that. You know what I'm saying? You know, they also had additional. They also had additional production work by Chris Kimsey with this one and everything like that too. You know what I'm saying? You have dope songs like "Rock in a Hard Place." That was a big single at that time and everything like that too. And then you had "Terrifying," very dope sound and everything, which I feel like don't get talked about a lot. "Mixed Emotions" was cool. You know what I'm saying? "Sad, Sad, Sad." Nice way to kick off the album. "Break the Spell." That was pretty cool. I love that one. So, yeah, this album right here was pretty awesome for the most part and everything. They went back to the basics. Definitely had like a more rock heavy sound and everything. So, I would definitely give this a 4 out of 5. I definitely like this album. So, after the release of Steel Wheels, pretty much, they was going through a lot of transitioning. Most notably, they were going through a successful tour, the Steel Wheels tour, which I personally feel the tour was more successful than the album, if that makes sense and everything. And especially because you had cats like Guns N' Roses, Living Color, opening for them and everything. And, also around that time too, Flashpoint, which was like the 1981 live album, and it also had some new studios tracks that came out and everything. So what was also interesting about this era was the fact that Steel Wheels was actually the last album Bill Wyman took part of, because at that time too he had recently got married to a very young girl, which I want to let y'all read more about that and everything like that too, because that's another story for a different day. But yeah, so he pretty much retired from the Rolling Stones in 1993, and he actually formed his other band, like Bill Wyman's Rhythm Kings. He did that years later, so that was pretty interesting. And so, at that time too, the band took a little break. The band took a little break from recording, and they wanted to do some different things and stuff like that too. Ronnie Wood, he dropped his first solo album in years, called "Slide on This" and everything. I never actually heard that album. Never actually heard that album, but if I do listen to it one day, definitely let you know. Charlie Watts, he dropped a couple of jazz albums, like "From One Charlie" and "Warm and Tender," which he recorded with like the Charlie Watts Quintet and everything. So that was pretty interesting, and it makes sense because his drumming has definitely been influenced by like a lot of jazz drumming, so it definitely makes sense. Um, Also, too, Mick and Keith, they dropped their own solo albums as well. Keith had dropped his second solo album, Main Offender, which was pretty solid. Wasn't as good as Talk Is Cheap in my opinion, but it definitely was another solid album for him. And then Mick Jagger dropped his, in my opinion, best solo album, Wandering Spirit, in 1993. That album was fire and everything. That definitely had him going to like a more contemporary but bluesy kind of sound and stuff. So, and around that time in like 93, 94, Virgin Records, they pretty much, had their eye on the Stones by re-releasing their albums from like Steel Wheel, from Sticky Fingers to Steel Wheels and everything. And that's when, they started working on their next album, Voodoo Lounge. Now, Voodoo Lounge was pretty much their first of two albums that they dropped, two studio albums that they dropped in the 90s and everything. And honestly, this album definitely feels like an album that came out in the 90s. I'm trying to pull up the album cover. Give me 1 second. So yeah, this album came out in 1994. You know what I'm saying? Very, very, very dope album. This album definitely took me by surprise when I first heard it. I remember when I first heard this album, I wasn't really too big on it like that, you know what I'm saying? It was definitely an album of the time. You can definitely tell it was definitely made in the 90s and everything, in place of Bill Wyman, in terms of bass, they added what's the motherfucker's name? Daryl Jones and everything as his replacement. And so this album definitely had like a more contemporary rock feel of the 90s, a little bit of blues, a little bit of roots rock here and there. It got them the Grammy for Best Rock Album from 1995, so that should tell you something. So many dope songs from this album, like Love Is Strong. That was a big single back at that time. Very dope video too. Moon Is Up, Blinded by Rainbows. My favorite track on this album, Out of Tears. One of my personal favorite Rolling Stones ballads of all time. You know what I'm saying? So, very, very, very dope album. Whenever I think of this album, Call Me Crazy, I think of that show Melrose Place, because they always play a lot of songs from this album at that time and everything like that too. You know what I'm saying? Most notably like songs like Out of Tears. I remember them playing that one. I want to say they played I Go Wild and stuff too. So yeah, man, this is definitely a very dope album. Very, very, very dope album. I feel like it aged a lot better. It aged a lot better compared to when it came out originally. So that should tell you something. Alright, so after the release of that album, of course, they definitely went on tour like they always do and everything. And that tour, again, was one of their highest grossing tours of all time. And that led them to drop their Stripped live album from 1995, which they actually had other covers of other songs like Bob Dylan's Like a Rolling Stone. Again, that was a pretty solid live album. If you guys want to see a good show, definitely look up some clips from that Voodoo Lounge tour and everything like that. So that's a pretty good one. And so fast forward to 1997, they dropped their Bridges to Babylon album. So this album right here definitely is a very different album compared to the other albums we've talked about, like Steel Wheels and Voodoo Lounge. While those albums definitely had their time when they went to like a return to form, Bridges to Babylon definitely was more experimental. It was more experimental, especially experimental with like genres like electronic music, reggae, and everything. This is definitely them trying to adapt to like the current trends at that time too. You know what I'm saying? Very, very, very interesting album. When I first heard this album, I did not like this album. Really did not like this album. Now, when I was re-listening to the album, I'm like, you know what? It actually has some dope joints. Like, you had that song "Anybody Seen My Baby," which that had production from the Dust Brothers, you know. And you know the Dust Brothers, most notably, they did some work with like the Beastie Boys on like their Paul's Boutique album. They also produced a lot of stuff for Beck too, like some mostly his '90s, a lot of his '90s stuff. Gunface was pretty dope. I love mixed vocals on that. Then you have Low Down. Then you have Might As Well Get Juiced. That was pretty good. You know, Flip the Switch. That was also pretty good too. You know, so this album definitely was a very, 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 very experimental album. I personally feel it's one of those albums you might have to re-listen to a couple of times to really appreciate it. I'm gonna give it a 3.5 out of 5. I definitely feel like that's definitely a fair rating for that album. So yes, after the release of that, you know, of course, they went on tours and everything like that. You know what I'm saying? Mick Jagger, he dropped his fourth album, "Got Us in the Doorway." That was pretty cool and everything. Not one of my favorite Mick Jagger albums, but it definitely had its hits and everything. So in between all that time, from like '87, from '97 to 2005, they mostly just stuck to touring and everything, and pretty much, you know, selling out shows and arenas and everything like that too. Fast forward to 2005, they dropped their only album in the 2000s, which was kind of crazy if you think about it. You know what I'm saying? Which is a bigger bang. This album came out and everything. This album was actually this album was okay. It was like another one of those back to basics album, especially after British to Babylon and everything. It was okay. It wasn't really one of my all time favorites. Wasn't really one of my all time favorites from this period and everything. It had some dope joints. Like it had some dope joints. Like Rough Justice was cool. Rain Falls Down, Biggest Mistake, and everything. It won't take long. But I don't know. I just feel like a lot of this I've heard before and everything. You know what I'm saying? I mean, definitely, it's still a definitely good album. Still definitely a good album, but I just really would not really put it on one of my favorites and everything like that too. And one of my go-tos. So I'm gonna give this again a 3 out of 5. I feel like it's definitely worth it and everything. And around this time, after the release of that, you know, of course, they were still doing their tours and everything. And a couple of shows that they did in the Beacon Theater in New York City, they filmed that for their documentary film Shine a Light. Very, very, very dope documentary and everything. If you want like a good basis on like the Stone, you know, rare interviews, that might be the best bet for you. That might be the best documentary for you and everything. So around this time and everything, they were definitely doing their tours. But then fast forward to 2016, you know, they wanted to also go back to their roots again. So they dropped their covers album Blue and Lonesome, you know, in 2016. And again, this was them going back to their roots and everything like that, you know, going doing their covers of people that they were influenced by. You know what I'm saying? Like, for example, like, yeah, covers from Howlin' Wolf, which that was a clear influence on Mick Jagger and everything. You know what I'm saying? Motherfucking Buddy Johnson, Lil Walter, Willie Dixon, which Willie Dixon, his stuff has been covered a lot by a lot of all those British acts and everything. So excuse me. So all in all, not bad. You know, vintage Rolling Stone stuff. You know, covers like Blue and Lonesome, Ride 'Em On Down, Hate to See You Go, and everything. I definitely feel like it definitely suited them and everything. So I'll give this a 4 out of 5. So after the release of Blue and Lonesome, they were definitely, still doing their thing on the tour side of things. But then tragically in 2021, Charlie Watts, he had to go get medical treatment and everything. You know what I'm saying? Because he was going through cancer and everything like that too. Which, he was fighting that for a good minute. He was fighting that for a good minute and everything. And tragically in 2021, he actually passed away. He actually passed away and everything like that. You know what I'm saying? Which is such a shame because he's definitely one of the best drummers and everything like that too. Actually, excuse me, I made a slight mistake. He actually died from this disease called squamous cell carcinoma. You know what I'm saying? So I made a slight mistake on that. You know what I'm saying? Rest in peace to Charlie Watts. Definitely one of the most iconic drummers of all time. And so, around that time too, they pretty much was reported that they were working on a new album, and they were getting help from like other acts like Stevie Wonder, Paul McCartney, Ringo Starr, and everything like that too. You know what I'm saying? And so fast forward to 2023, they dropped their Hackney Diamonds album. You know what I'm saying? Which this was a very, very, very good album in my opinion. Very dope album. Definitely entering the 2020s with a renewed sense of focus and everything like that too. I mean, it got to the point where some people would even go as far as saying this was like the best album since Tattoo You. This was the best album since Voodoo Lounge, depending on who you ask. And also it got them another Grammy for like best rock album. So when it comes to this album and everything like that, it definitely was blues rock, but it definitely had like a more polished kind of feel to it. I love songs like Depending on You, Dreamy Skies, Live by the Sword was pretty good, Mix sounded energetic as ever. Keith is playing was very good as well too, you know what I'm saying? So I felt like Mick, Keith, and Ryan definitely held their own on this, you know what I'm saying? And you have some guest appearances on this album like Stevie Wonder, who pretty much played piano on like Sweet Sounds of Heaven. You even had Bill Wyman coming back on Live by the Sword, which is interesting. Elton John, Lady Gaga was on this one and everything like that too. So this definitely was a very strong album. I'm gonna give this a 4.5 out of 5. And now finally, the last album I'm gonna get to 3 years later is their Foreign Tongues album. This is like their recent album that they came out with and everything. Let me put up the album cover. So you guys know I kind of like teased my thoughts on this album. This is definitely, in my opinion, way better than Hackney Diamonds, in my opinion, way better, but that's not disregarding Hackney Diamonds whatsoever. This definitely had like a more polished feel to it. Definitely, like when I heard that single, In the Stars, I was like, yeah, I definitely know what you did. And this is gonna be like one of those songs this summer and everything like that too. You know what I'm saying? Very dope, very, very, very dope. They also did a cover of Amy Winehouse, You Know I'm No Good. They did a cover of Chuck Berry's Beautiful Delilah, going back to their roots with that one. Never Wanna Lose You, Divine Intervention and stuff like that too, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, man, this was a very, very, very great album. Like 6 decades into their whole career and they were already still coming out with heat. I mean, it don't even make no sense, man. I'm gonna be real with you. I'm gonna definitely give this a 5 out of 5. It's just that whole fucking good, in my opinion. So definitely a very, very, very strong album. And yeah, I finally finished it, the discography breakdown on the Rolling Stones. So all in all, I definitely feel that. All in all, I definitely feel like this is definitely one of the most lucrative, discography breakdowns I've ever done and everything like that too. You know what I'm saying? if I was to pick albums to recommend, I would say roughly anything from 66 to 72. You can't go wrong with that. And this for first time listeners. I would even probably say if you want to start off with Tattoo You, I would not even mind that. Like some girls maybe Tattoo You. I would definitely recommend you starting off with that. Just don't start off with. I would not really start off with like their early '60s stuff. Not trying to disregard that, but I would try to like get y'all in like the songs where they were definitely known to really break out and everything like that too. So thank y'all so much for watching, and I hope I see y'all niggas later. Peace.